When you wake up and feel the weight of the world pressing down on you before your feet even touch the floor, do you actually know what's happening inside your mind? Yes, it feels normal. Everyone's tired. Everyone's overwhelmed. Everyone tells you to push through it. But behind that heaviness, there's something deeper that most people completely miss. It's not stress. It's not burnout. It's not just life being hard. It's a psychological trap you've been walking into every single morning without realizing it. And the part that should concern you is that nobody around you sees it either. They're caught in the same loop. But almost 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man in ancient Rome figured it out. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire while plagues swept through his cities, wars tore apart his borders, and the people closest to him plotted behind his back. He didn't complain about it. He didn't post about it. He sat down and wrote the truth in private journals, never meant for anyone else to read. And the lessons he left behind are so brutally honest that most people can't handle them when they finally hear them. Today we're breaking down 11 of those lessons. Each one targets a different lie you've been telling yourself. And the 11th one is something most people wish they understood sooner. It changes everything about how you see the people who've hurt you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Let's start with the first. Most people lose their day before it even begins. They wake up, grab their phone, scroll through notifications, and let other people's problems flood their brain within the first 30 seconds. Bad news, angry emails, someone else's highlight reel. All of it pouring in before you've even taken a breath. Marcus Aurelius did the opposite. Every morning before doing anything, he sat with his own thoughts. He reminded himself that today he would encounter difficult people, ungrateful people, dishonest people. He didn't do this to be negative. He did it to be prepared. Here's the thing, that first 30 minutes of your day sets the entire tone for everything that follows. Researchers studying cognitive priming found that whatever information enters your mind first thing in the morning creates a filter for how you interpret the rest of the day. If you start with chaos, you see chaos everywhere. If you start with someone else's agenda, you spend the day serving it. Marcus Aurelius understood this thousands of years before science caught up. He chose what entered his mind first. He set his own filter, and that single habit gave him more control over his emotions than most people will ever have in their entire lives. Think about that for a second. You're letting strangers on a screen dictate your mental state before you've even had a glass of water, and you wonder why you feel like you're never in control. Now here's where it goes deeper. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sounds simple but will shake you if you really sit with it. He said you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Most people hear that and nod along. Yeah, control what you can control. But they don't actually live it. They spend their entire day reacting. Someone cuts them off in traffic and their mood shifts. A coworker makes a comment and they replay it for hours. A text message gets left on read and suddenly they're spiraling. That's not living. That's being a puppet, and the strings are held by whoever happens to walk into your day. The Stoics called this the inner kingdom. It's the one territory nobody can invade unless you open the gates. And most people leave those gates wide open all day, every day. Here's what most people don't realize. Controlling your inner kingdom isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about choosing which emotions deserve your energy. There's a massive difference. One makes you numb, the other makes you dangerous. And that brings us to the third lesson, one that might be the most misunderstood idea in Stoicism. The obstacle is the way. Most people hear that and think it means, look on the bright side. It doesn't. It means the thing standing in front of you, the problem you're avoiding, the fear you keep running from. That is the actual path forward, not around it, not over it, through it. Marcus Aurelius didn't have the luxury of avoiding his problems. He had a crumbling empire, a disloyal senate, and a son who would eventually destroy his legacy. But he kept moving forward, not because he was optimistic, because he understood that resistance is fuel. Every wall you hit is showing you exactly where you need to grow. And if you keep turning away from it, you stay weak in that exact spot forever. And hey, if this is making you see your own habits differently right now, smash that like button and subscribe. It's the best way to help us reach more people who need to hear what Marcus Aurelius actually taught, not the watered-down version most people share. The fourth lesson cuts even deeper. Also, stop seeking approval. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it is in your power to withdraw yourself whenever you desire. Perfect tranquility within consists in the good ordering of the mind, your own mind. Most people spend their entire lives performing for an audience that isn't even watching. They dress for approval. They speak for approval. They make career decisions based on what will impress people they don't even like. And the worst part, the people they're trying to impress are too busy seeking their own approval from someone else. It's a chain of insecurity where nobody actually wins. Marcus Aurelius stopped caring what the crowd thought, and he was the emperor. He had more reason than anyone to care about public opinion. But he understood that the moment you hand your self-worth to someone else, you've already lost. You've given away the only thing that was truly yours. The fifth lesson is one most people refuse to think about: Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. That sounds dark. It sounds morbid. But here's the thing. Marcus Aurelius didn't meditate on death to be depressing. He did it to wake himself up. When you remember that your time is limited, something shifts inside you. That argument you've been holding on to for 3 weeks, it stops mattering. That job you hate but stay at because it's comfortable, suddenly the comfort isn't worth the cost. That person you've been meaning to call, you pick up the phone. Death isn't the enemy. Forgetting about death is. Because when you forget, you start living like you have forever, and people who think they have forever waste everything. The sixth lesson is one most people will resist: voluntary discomfort. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics practiced this deliberately. Cold exposure, sleeping on hard surfaces, fasting, walking when they could ride, wearing simple clothing when they could afford silk, not because they enjoyed suffering, because they understood something most modern people have completely forgotten. Comfort is a cage, and the bars are invisible. The more comfortable you get, the more fragile you become. And when life inevitably sends something hard your way, and it will, you shatter. You fall apart over things that shouldn't even slow you down. But if you've been choosing discomfort on your own terms, training yourself to endure what you don't have to, you've already built the armor before the arrows arrive. Seneca once warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Voluntary discomfort proves that to you in real time. You step into the cold. You skip the meal. You do the hard thing first, and you realize that the thing you feared wasn't that bad. It never was. Your mind made it into a monster, and that realization, that moment of clarity, rewires your entire relationship with fear. You stop running, you stop avoiding, and you start choosing the hard path on purpose, because you know it's making you into someone who can't be broken easily. The seventh lesson is quiet but devastating. Discard the fantasy. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this with painful clarity. Stop imagining how people should be. See them as they are. Most people walk around with a version of their parents, their partner, their friends, their boss that exists only in their head. And when the real person doesn't match the fantasy, they feel betrayed. But the betrayal isn't real. The fantasy was the lie. You built an expectation nobody agreed to, and then you punished them for not living up to it. The Stoic approach is brutal but freeing. Accept people exactly as they are, not as you wish they were, not as they promised to be, as they are right now, today. It doesn't mean you tolerate everything. It means you stop being surprised by reality. The eighth lesson is the one most people get wrong: the power of non-reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and you have the power to revoke that at any moment. Here's what most people don't realize: non-reaction is not weakness, it's the highest form of control. When someone insults you and you don't flinch, you've just taken away every ounce of power they thought they had. When someone tries to provoke you and you remain still, you've won a battle they didn't even know they'd already lost. This isn't about being passive, it's about being strategic. You choose not to be harmed, and that choice, that single internal decision, changes everything. The ninth lesson is about focus. Marcus Aurelius wrote about concentrating every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. Not scattered attention, not half effort, full presence. Most people think they're busy. They're not. They're distracted. They have 12 tabs open, 3 conversations going, and a to-do list they haven't looked at since Monday. That's not productivity, that's noise. The Stoic way is to do one thing at a time with what Marcus Aurelius called Roman seriousness. Give it everything, finish it, move to the next. Researchers studying deep work found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully refocus after a distraction. Most people are interrupted every 11 minutes. Do the math. They never actually focus at all. And then they wonder why nothing gets done. The 10th lesson is one that ego kills in most people. Self-correction. Marcus Aurelius didn't see himself as a finished product. He saw himself as a student, every single day, even as emperor, even with absolute power. He wrote about his own flaws openly, his temper, his impatience, his tendency to judge others too quickly, his struggle with laziness. He didn't hide from those things. He didn't pretend they didn't exist. He studied them. He interrogated himself, the way a general interrogates a prisoner. Where did I go wrong today? What triggered that reaction? What would a better version of me have done? How can I be closer to that tomorrow? Most people stop learning after a certain age. They decide who they are and then defend that identity at all costs, even when it's clearly not working. They would rather be consistently wrong than admit they need to change. Marcus Aurelius never stopped correcting himself. He treated every failure as data, not as a verdict. And that's exactly why his words still matter 2,000 years later, because he wasn't writing from perfection. He was writing from the daily fight to become better, and that fight never ended for him. Now here's the 11th lesson. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning, the one most people wish they'd understood sooner. Your greatest weakness can become your greatest strength, but only if you're willing to face it directly. Only if you stop pretending it doesn't exist. Marcus Aurelius spent years dealing with betrayal, from advisors, from allies, from his own family, people he trusted, people he loved, people he would have given everything to protect. And here's what he understood, that most people never will. The people who hurt you the most are teaching you the most, not because pain is good, not because suffering is noble, but because pain shows you where you're exposed. It shows you the cracks in your armor that you've been ignoring, the parts of yourself that you refuse to look at. And once you see those cracks, you can finally repair them. Sometimes the reason someone hurt you is that they genuinely wanted to destroy you. They saw your light and wanted to extinguish it. Other times it's because they were testing boundaries you never set. They pushed because you never pushed back. And sometimes the hardest truth of all, it's because you allowed it. You taught them how to treat you by what you tolerated, by what you accepted in silence, by what you forgave without requiring change. The Stoic response? Marcus Aurelius taught that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, not to mirror their cruelty, not to sink to their level. Don't become bitter. Don't become cruel. Don't mirror the behavior that wounded you. Instead, become someone they could never break again. That's real power. Not the power to destroy others. The power to rebuild yourself into something unshakable. These 11 lessons aren't philosophy. They're not theory you read once and forget. They're tools for survival. Marcus Aurelius didn't write them in a comfortable study with a glass of wine. He wrote them on battlefields, during plagues, in the middle of political chaos, surrounded by people who wanted him to fail. He wrote them to keep himself sane, to keep himself sharp, to keep himself human when everything around him was pulling him toward bitterness and rage. And if you apply even one of them, genuinely apply it. Not just read it and nod and move on to the next video, your life will not look the same in 6 months. You'll stop reacting to every small thing that used to ruin your day. You'll stop seeking approval from people who don't matter. You'll stop fearing discomfort. You'll stop living in the fantasy version of your relationships. And you'll start building something inside yourself that nobody, no matter how hard they try, can take away from you. If this made you see your life differently, smash the like button for others who need to wake up. Share this with someone who's going through something hard right now. Subscribe if you want more lessons that cut through the noise and actually change how you move through the world. Because these lessons, they were never accidental to Marcus Aurelius, and they shouldn't be accidental to you either.